In this video, we're going to talk about rates, where they headed, and we're going to give you some simple strategy on how to get the lowest rate. My name is Bruno. I am with Bruno Fine Properties. I'm with my good friend Andrew Steinbrecher, Academy Mortgage. Andrew, so I've been in the business for 20 years. How about yourself?
I've been doing loans for about 17 now.
17 years. So 37 years of combined experience in this room. Now, I've seen rates get as low as 3%, I believe. And I think when I got into business, they were about 6% around that. What's the highest you've ever seen rates?
So since I've been doing what I do, probably the highest I've seen rates in a normal market, assuming great credit, might be 6.875 or
wow.
even 7%
Okay.
sometimes.
So in your experience, it's gotten up to 7.
Absolutely.
What do you think is going to happen in the next year, next 2 years with rates?
So I think undoubtedly at this point in time, the trend is up, right? But there's a lot of information that feeds into where rates are going. And one of them, obviously, is the economy, how the economy's doing. A good thing to consider is as the economy does well, rates tend to rise because the mortgage-backed securities market, where rates are really the basis for which is determined, actually is like a bond market. So as the economy does really, really well, people tend to pull money out of that market and go into stocks or equities, creating that supply. That has a natural pressure to push rates up to bring the balance back.
A client recently asked me, what's a buy down? And they heard about buying down the rate. What's that all about?
Right, and so there's a lot of strategies, right? So now we already understand what the basis of rate is. That's the mortgage-backed securities market. As it goes up, everybody goes up, and then there's the second level, which is what's your FICO score, right? That's considered. But then there are programs that certainly can be made available to a client or a buyer that are sort of specialized, right? And this has everything to do with strategy. So some people might look at paying something called discount points, right? Discount points is really something that you prepay up front for a slightly lower interest rate. I often do not quote a program with discount points or origination, and the reason is because the cost to achieve that low rate and the savings that you actually are achieving, so I call that the payment differential. Usually that savings, and I look at this in terms of a return on investment, doesn't even start to pay off until 5, 6, or 7 years later.
Okay.
So that's why I say maybe investing in buying down a rate doesn't make sense. But there's another strategy that does make sense, and that's something called maybe a seller buy down, right? This is where, and this comes into something that you're very good at, right? Having your home buyers and negotiating that contract. You could negotiate a contract where it has the seller actually buying that rate down for that buyer. So there's really no cost coming out of the buyer's pocket at that point. It's on the seller's side, and that effectively can translate into a lower interest rate.
Okay.
We also offer specialized programs. We have what's called a 2-1 buy down.
2-1 buy down.
Yeah, this is a great program for first-time home buyers, maybe even for people getting out of college. People have some expectation that the job they're just starting, that their income is going to increase.
Okay.
Right. So the way a 2-1 buy down would work is that we would qualify that borrower at, say, a 5% interest rate, depending on what it is, and then the start rate, so years 1 and 2, so the first year the start rate would be 2% lower than 5, so a start rate of 3%.
Okay.
Right? And then the next year it would go up 1 more percent to 4%. And then in year 3, you would be at the full payment level for that particular program. The program does have a cost, and again, the strategy with something like this might be to have that seller pay those costs.
Okay. And so it's kind of it's an adjustable rate, but it is fixed.
So actually, technically, it's not an adjustable rate.
Okay.
It behaves kind of like that. And the reason why it's not an adjustable rate is because the cost to that program is actually set up as an escrow account to offset the P&I payment. So if you have a P&I payment of $500, right, qualified on a 5% interest rate, and the payment at 3% might be $331 or whatever, right? Then there's an escrow account actually that pays the difference in those payments.
Okay.
And so it really is a note rate at your qualified rate.
Wow.
but the escrow account offsets the payment for the borrower,
And
so
this-
it doesn't adjust that way.
Okay, and the strategy is having the seller pay that difference into that account.
Right. The cost can be buyer or seller funded, but again, this is a strategy where I would tend to make an offer, that would incorporate the seller paying for
All right,
that.
that's an excellent strategy, and I plan to use that
Sure.
on my next
Looking
deal.
forward to it.
If you would like a list of foreclosures like this property, be happy to send them to you. We have a list of foreclosures in the North Houston area: Conroe, Katy, Cypress, Spring, the Woodlands. Just leave your email or click a button which will link you to the list. Be happy to send it to you and update you every Monday with the new foreclosures that hit the market.